Hello and good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with Authors Chat with Richard Thomas, and many of you already know Richard. And hello, Richard.
Hi there.
Hi. And we're going to be talking about his very first book, which he has told me it was about 2 years ago, The End of the Line. But I want to start with something called a coddiwomple. And at the end, after you've seen the coddiwomple, which I will give you a very brief explanation as to what it is. So just bear with me a moment, and I will share this video with you. Okay, here we go. So, Richard, please do tell all of us, what is a coddiwomple?
Well, I didn't know the word existed until a couple of weeks ago. I was watching Countdown, and Susie Dent introduced a new word. It's about going on a journey without knowing where you're going. And as she described it, I thought, that's what I do. I go somewhere without really knowing where I'm going or where I'm going to end up. But it's about going on that journey. So I put that video together. I put it together some time ago. And I thought, oh, it's time to resurrect it and introduce the word coddiwomple. So there we are, coddiwomple.
And I'm really glad you did, because I love the fact that you're wearing a mask. So obviously, you did that during the lockdown.
Some of it, yes.
Yeah. And in fact, one of my favorite photos of all of your photos in the book is the one called Lockdown, which was around Elephant Castle.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So just to reintroduce Richard Thomas, The End of the Line, we're going to be finding out about Richard himself, so that readers will get to know much more about Richard, and also about the book and the process, because I really loved this book from the very beginning. When I saw Richard's book, I loved it. Just very briefly, it's because it's to do with railway lines, about travel, about engines, because my background is from India, and my father was an engine driver. So it really resonates with me, all this traveling by rail. So Richard, let's talk about your book a little bit, and let's talk about you. Your book is very different from the first two that I have already discussed, which is a memoir. In fact, yours is a sort of a memoir, is it not? But tell us about the background to your book and yourself.
Well, I'm not sure it is a memoir. To me, it's a photographic journey. So if that's what a memoir is, then fine. I'm not hung up about a genre of books. But the background of the book, I've always been interested in photographic books. In fact, this is the book that inspired me. Oh, that's not coming
quite
through.
See it.
No.
Oh, sorry about that.
No,
just tell us the title.
Yeah, the book is called English Cottages. And it's a book I saw in my town library when I was about 10 years old. So that's about 57 years ago. It's given my age away now. But the book is a picture book. It's photographs. And what I liked about it is each page is an A4 softback book. And each page is a picture. It's a color photograph. And I just like the book, the look and the feel, and the ability to be able to pick up a book and just flick through and enjoy the pictures. There are words that describe the book. And that book has stayed with me. And I bought that book. And that book has stayed with me. And the memory of that book has stayed with me for all those years. And I bought a series of books that reflect and resemble that book over the years as well. So that kind of book has stayed with me. And I think I've always had a hankering of maybe one day, the thought has hung there for a long time. Photography has been with me for a long time. My father was a photographer, and he introduced me to photography. So from about my early teens, I used to invade my parents' kitchen every weekend. I would take it over, put the plastic up over the kitchen window, and they were only allowed in after tea, around about 9 o'clock, to make a cup of tea in the evening. So Friday night through until Sunday night, the kitchen was my domain. So it was quite a regimented process. I would mix my own chemicals. I would I would buy the chemicals, make up the chemicals myself. I would develop and print in black and white, and I would just go off, enjoy my travels, enjoy taking photographs. So combining photographs, I've always carried a camera with me.
Hmm.
And then I met my wife, I got married, I had kids, and I ran out of money. I couldn't afford to do everything I wanted to do.
Hmm.
At the same time, I fell out of love with photography because digital cameras came along.
Mm.
And to me, digital photography was a bit like cheating, because you no longer had to think about taking the picture.
Mm.
You just pointed and pressed.
Yeah.
And then the advent of mobile phones came along. But the tables turned because when I retired back in 2018, I was having this very conversation with one of my work colleagues, and he said, "Well, if you go back to the early days of black and white photography, even Fox Talbot, um, even he manipulated photographs when he was producing his photographs on plate in his darkroom. He would play around with it." And I thought, okay, I get that. So maybe digital photography isn't that bad after all.
Uh-huh.
So it sort of gave me an opening to carry on doing what I was doing. So the end of the line was born. I decided as part of my retirement due, I was talking to somebody and said, I'm going to become the end of the line. I'd already worked out I was going to travel to the end of every tube line. And that's how the end of the line uh, was born.
Yeah.
It's the end. It's a story of not getting to the end of the line, but it's getting from the end of the line. So
Hmm.
traveling to all the end of the lines, end of the tube lines in London, and then journeying on from there, coddiwompling on from there. Um, so a lot of people think the book is about trains. Yes, it's a travel journey on trains,
Mm.
but it's not about trains. It's about going on a train journey
Yeah.
and then exploring the community outside.
Yeah.
And it's a book about photography. It's about my journey of exploring the streets around London.
Just out of interest, if you started from one line, say of the one end of the central line to the very end, roughly how long is that journey for those who've never traveled on the underground, as an example?
Oh, I think the Central Line is probably one of the longest journeys, maybe about 2 hours long from end to end.
Really?
Piccadilly Line, maybe the longest.
Yeah.
Heathrow through to Cockfosters, maybe
Right.
2.5 hours long. If you
Oh.
look at it on a map, it's not very long, but
Hmm.
when you count all the stops,
Yes.
when I moved to London, my first manager gave me a piece of advice when commuting through London,
Hmm.
which has stuck with me ever since. Um, if you're planning a journey, no matter where you're traveling to or from, each stop is roughly 3 minutes.
Yes.
So if you count the number of stops from where you are to where you want to get to, uh, 3 minutes per stop, you'll roughly work out how long it's going to take,
Yeah.
subject to delays, of course.
Yeah.
But on a good day, when all the trains are running on time, then that's a way of calculating how long it's going to take you to get there.
Yeah. I like the idea of the journey because I think I do coaching. So very much it's about saying to my client, I'll walk with you on a journey and we'll stop and we'll talk and we'll look and we'll discuss and we'll find out what it is that you're wanting, what makes you excited, what doesn't. So I think always, like so many of us know, it's the journey process that's important, not about the destination. We're going to get there. We know
Absolutely.
where we want to
Yeah.
go. But it's how rich can that journey process be for us? And for me, it's the memories that we then gather along that journey and the people we talk to. So tell us about because your book is it's a wonderful book. When I actually looked through it, there's so much in that book of yours. How long did it take you to put the whole thing together? It's very detailed. It's got history, it's got facts, figures, questions, photographs, all of those things that are in your book. It's not just us writing a memoir, as an example, just all words, but you've got more than that. So tell us a little bit about the process of how you actually did all of that and put it together. How long did it take you?
Okay. Well, before I do that, just a little bit more background about the book.
Okay.
When we moved to London in 1990. The kids were growing up, and there was a charity walk around London. It was sponsored by Cadbury's. It was a 10-mile walk around London. It was done on a Sunday morning around parts of London that were normally I wouldn't say closed, but just busy because commuters would be all over the place. It was a strollathon, and it was a 10-mile walk through parts of London you wouldn't normally get to see. And that was part of my inspiration as well, of looking into parts of London. You would get to see parts of London that you wouldn't normally see.
Yeah.
There's a very famous blogger around London. She's called Look Up London, and she does what she says in the title: look up rather than looking down.
Yeah.
People these days are constantly looking at their phone.
Yeah.
As a commuter, they're rushing to get to where they want to get to, rather than looking around, looking up, looking around to see what they can see. So that was part of my inspiration. Back to your question around how long did it take me? It took me 2 years to do all the visits. There were 79 stations. So roughly one station a week. I sometimes did more than that in a week, and sometimes I didn't do any visits. But my routine would be I would go out to visit. I would spend a couple of days sorting through all the photographs. I would spend a couple of days writing a blog, and then a couple of days to myself. So that's a week taken up.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit and lockdown hit. So that in 2020, nothing to do. Suddenly, I was introduced to Michael Heppel of Write That Book. Thank you, Michael. I had a 5-minute conversation with Michael. I saw something pop up on Twitter, and I dropped him a message, and he rang me, and we had that conversation, and I subscribed straight away.
Yeah.
And that first meeting with Michael, he explained to me writing a book is a process. I obviously had some inkling that I wanted to write a book, but I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. But he explained quite clearly, it's a process. You break it down into things that you can do, are difficult, but you can do. So in terms of starting to think about writing the book to having produced the book, probably 6 months. Hard work, but hard work isn't a bad thing. Out of my comfort zone completely, because I'd never done these things before. I'd written. I'm not an accomplished writer. I guess even though I was a career civil servant, and I wrote briefs for ministers, I never enjoyed it. I never enjoyed writing. I'd rather talk to people and explain to people what you need to do. But putting words down, I'm not a wordsmith, I have to admit. So the thought of putting words down. So my initial idea was a photographic book, just full of pictures. And as part of the Write That Book group, my accountability group, we were in groups of 10 or so. The group encouraged me to write about the picture, to write about where I'd been, to write about the stations I'd been to. And I have to admit, the thought didn't inspire me. But I had to listen to what my peers were telling me.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I've got to give it a go because that's what they want to read.
Yeah.
So I knuckled down and I wrote the first chapter as a taster, as a starter for 10, partly to see how long it would take me and partly to see what the reaction would be. And I was surprised the reaction was very positive. Clearly work to do on the writing and the material, but as an idea, it flourished. And then that set the scene. So how that then evolved into a book, I think I was quite clear straight away how the book would look, how it would shape.
Yeah.
There were 11 tube lines. There were other lines as well, the Overground, what has now become the Elizabeth line. So I felt the chapters were going to follow the train lines.
Yes.
But then I was introduced to Jen Garside, my designer, who would produce a number of books for other friends in the Write That Book group. And I just gave her the pictures and I gave her the words. And her first creation was, I just blown away. She got the idea, she got the concept, and she just created what you now see as book one.
Yes. Yeah.
There was a lot of toing and froing, but the design principle didn't change from the first attempt. And I was blessed with a magic designer.
Yeah, it's that focus.
So 6 months.
You see, Yeah, it's the focus that I've noticed in the book all the way through. I mean, those lines really take your eye all the way through. And it's not only that, it's just the way it's all laid out. It's so well laid out, your book. The stories follow the facts, and some of the facts are mind-blowing. My God, I didn't know so much about what you have written. A question I wanted to ask you, but it's actually a good question I'm going to ask you further down, but I'll ask this to you now. So you've traveled around, you've stood on the station with all the people around you. And the question I was going to ask you is, or thing I was thinking about, there is so much national and local history about every station that you have actually documented. I mean, stories that we, as a reader, are not familiar with. But those travelers who stood on the station, I wonder how much they were aware of the history that was surrounding them. And I wonder now, how do you feel that you know so much about what you have observed, documented? I mean, did you know all about this before, or you learned as you went along?
Oh, I learned as I went along. Let me ask you the question. Do you travel by train?
I love traveling by train. I love
Right.
it. And
So,
when I lived in London, I traveled the Northern Line a great deal.
so when you traveled on the last train journey, do you know anything about the last station that you traveled
Uh,
through?
yeah, Bucharest. I was in Bucharest last
Right.
week, and I went by train from a place called Constanta to Bucharest, and I absolutely loved it. And in
So
fact,
did you
I
know
sent you a
anything
book.
about that station?
Constanta, in honesty, not a great deal. Why? Because I was
So
lazy.
I'm just throwing the question back. I'm
Yeah,
throwing the question back at you.
yeah,
Um, and I think the honest answer is very few people know about the station that they're at because
yeah,
they're there for a purpose. Is
yeah,
to get to somewhere or is to arrive from somewhere.
yeah,
Um, did I know about the places? Absolutely not. Um, a lot of time researching. And the way I research is Google. Um, I might see something whilst I'm there, or I might see somebody,
hmm,
and I'll research. I might see a website, and I'll research that website,
yeah,
and then it's like a domino effect. That'll lead me on to somewhere else, and somewhere else, and somewhere else, and I'll follow that breadcrumb through until I'm comfortable that there's a story to tell, and I've got uh, confidence that the information that I'm sharing has some credence to it.
hmm,
So I'm not just picking up a story from somewhere across the internet.
yeah,
It's got a credence across a number of sites that validates what I'm saying.
yeah,
Because there is a danger. You pick up something on the internet, you share it, and then somebody blows it out of the water because it's not true.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
Particularly with historical information,
yeah.
I do spend a lot of time validating what I write.
Yes, and I think for me it was the huge amount of information which I will take the time to read. All the different lines. I mean, at the very front of the book, I think you talked about, I haven't got the detail here, you talked about the detail of TfL as an example, and all the train lines and the station. And yeah, I can see that. I would call it a very erudite book, definitely. And I think that for those people who love, even for people who love just traveling by train, they're going to get so much out of it. I remember having a conversation with you about TfL and about approaching them to offer your book to them. What came of that? Did anything? Because I would have thought they'd been so interested to have your book, to sell it, to offer it to you. What happened with that?
I approached TfL. My initial approach to them was I asked them if I could use their map in the
Yeah,
book because that was my journey planner. They kindly invited me to pay them £2,000 for the privilege of putting their map in my book. So I declined the invitation.
right.
And as part of that conversation, they then explained that some of the pictures I'd taken had been taken from their stations without their permission. And because I was trying to monetize the pictures, that I should have sought their permission beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And they then wanted to charge me a backward license fee of £2,000
Mm-hmm.
to publish my pictures.
Yeah.
I then declined that invitation and I changed the pictures.
Okay.
So there was a learning exercise there about license fees, about being on property, and about intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
TfL is very protective of their intellectual property. I think excessively so. That's my personal opinion. I think it's a view held by many people as well.
Mm.
TfL are out to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
Um, and it's difficult when you're in London not to capture a picture of TfL property.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
it seems it's fine to post images on a social network, but once you try and monetize that,
Mm.
then you fall foul of their licensing
Yeah.
arrangements.
Yeah. So you managed to get
So
around it anyway.
I have, yes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to also ask you, is there any other book like yours around?
I don't believe there is.
Hmm.
I do have one, but clearly I can't show it you because the background is just going to blur it.
Yes.
I'm just going to reach around. I'm going to try, but it's not going to come through
Hmm.
now.
Sorry about that.
It's by a very clever photographer. He's known as the Tube Mapper. His name is Luke Agabimoni. He goes around London and he cleverly captures symmetrical images of London. He produced 2 books now over the last couple of years. But again, his book is more photography rather than words around it.
Hmm.
So it's quite a smallish book, not quite A4. Um, I like the pictures, but there's a particular style to his.
Mhm.
It's all about being on the underground and taking images in the underground, but they're symmetrical images.
Yeah.
So very clever and very staged images.
Yeah. Yeah.
So compared to mine are more street photography.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't stage my pictures at all. I see what's there and capture what's there,
Yeah.
and create the story that's around those images.
Yeah. I noticed
But
that at some of the stations. Sorry, carry on.
no, but I certainly want to give a shout out to Luke because I actually enjoy his photography.
Yeah. Yeah. So your book is unique, everybody. Richard's book is a very unique way of telling his story about his travels. And how does it no, before I ask the question, what are the favorite parts of your of the book and why?
The design. Because I mentioned before the way that Jen has crafted the look of the book, the look
Mm,
and feel.
mm,
It just looks nice. It feels nice.
yeah.
Some of the design principles that she's put in. We worked early on to make sure that the color scheme matched the color scheme of the underground.
Yeah.
So people who are familiar with the underground lines will be familiar with the color scheme that
Mhm.
matches the chapters. The splash pages lead you into each chapter.
Yeah.
The colors of each chapter follow you through page by page. And just the layout is consistent and is clean and is
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah.
The pictures will always feature on the left-hand side of the book,
Mhm.
and the words on the right-hand side. So there's no someone here, someone on some side, and some on the other side.
Yeah.
So there's a consistency in how the book plays out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it feels nice as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a very, very readable book. It is a big topic, I think, of a big topic contained in a very specific area of a very specific parts of London. But there is so much to it, and I love all the photos. And I wanted to just mention some of my favorite photos, if you don't mind. So some of my favorite photos, in fact, I love the fact that you have a question at the beginning of some of the chapters. One question I liked was in Q4, how many works of art has Mark Wallinger created around the underground, which is a circle line, and how many works of art has Mark created?
You tell me.
I don't know. I didn't read that bit because I looked again. I couldn't find it. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Well, the answer is the same number as the number of stations on the London Underground.
Whoa, that's a lot of, and have I not seen that then? Have I been so blind on the underground stations I haven't been seeing all that artwork?
The artwork is quite specific.
Tell me about
Um,
it.
they are specific and they are different, but they're similar.
Mm-hmm.
You've caught me on the hop now.
Sorry.
The collection of images is called, oh heck,
Not to
it's
worry.
gone.
No,
It's
not to
gone.
worry. The reader can
Um,
find out for themselves.
read my book, buy my book, and you get the
Yes.
answer. Search the internet. You'll search the artist's name. You'll get the answer.
Yeah.
Um, the images are probably about this square,
Mm-hmm.
and they are circles within circles or squares within squares.
Oh, right.
So you may have seen them without realizing, and you thought, "Oh, that's interesting."
Hmm.
And on each one, there's a number that identifies that as a specific and individual piece of artwork, specific to that station.
Okay. Okay. When I next travel to London, I'm going to look out for that now and open my
Or
eyes.
what you can do, Beth, is turn to the back page. The answer's on the back page of the book.
Okay. Oh, listen, I wanted to go on a journey.
Go on the journey.
I wanted to go a journey again. Up in Scotland, there are no underground stations. But just to let you know very briefly, some of my favorite pictures, and I'll just quickly, the one I love is, I remember, did you have a competition about that to ask which one you should put in? Was on page 14, Lockdown, Elephant and Castle. It was the yellow lock. I don't know why
Yes.
I love it. I think it's the brightness, it's the shape, it's everything. And a lock to me is about being inquisitive. I want to take a key and I want to open it up. I want to see what's going to go through there. And I love the imagery and what it really means. And some of the other ones I liked was page 114 for those who got the book, World Rainbow, Heathrow Terminal 5. I really like that. I like the way, was it? No, I'll leave that a bit. Page 122, 122, The Birds in Walthamstow Central. Page 132, The Kiss in Waterloo. I love that one. And page 210 was the yellow boxes. Now, I don't know why the yellow boxes really captured my imagination. It was in Chingford Station. And the last one, or one of the many, was page 236, The Golden Alcoves in New Addington. I thought that was the mosaic, 3 arched mosaics are absolutely stunning. And I think what you've done for me as a reader is open my eyes to look at the underground stations and even going outside and look around much more and become aware of what there is just standing on a platform and what there is around us. And that's what you've done for me when I'm looking at that book. You've introduced me to so much as a reader. You've expanded my knowledge, and I'm hungry now to go back. And I remember traveling on the Northern Line and all the stations I used to go through. And I actually did go to Walthamstow, the very end of the line, once. And I was quite surprised. I always had an image of what Walthamstow was like. It was not that nice. But when I went there, I walked through and I went to this wonderful little park. And I saw the history in the park and I thought, there's so much that it's time for me to open my mind much more. And I thank you for that, because you've done that for me as a reader. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. So
the thing to recall, though, is, as I said in my book, is if you repeat the journey that I did, the chances are you might not see what I see, but you'll see your own journey.
Yeah.
Because some of those things are no longer there. The birds, for example, are no longer there.
Okay.
There's a new development that's knocked that mural down. But the whole point is, as you described, what beautifully is, you open your eyes, you realize that there's more to be seen if you just look around you.
Yeah.
Enjoy what you can see rather than see what you want to see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I want to ask you something. I think you touched on it very briefly, but I read about you asking people permission to take their photos. how is it when you approach people and you ask them to take their photo? Because nowadays, to take a photo of somebody, some people get so irate and so angry. Mothers don't like their pictures of their children taken. People will say, why are you taking my photo? What are you going to use it for? But when you went around, what was your experience of taking pictures of people?
A bit of both. If I met any resistance, then I decided not to aggravate the resistance. There's no point trying to create a situation that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
If they didn't want to have their picture taken, for whatever reason, then once there's a story there, it wasn't one I was willing to tell. But there's a picture of Ed sitting in a park in Ealing Broadway. He was sitting there quietly. He was drawing pictures of trees. He was doing some life drawing of trees, and he was engrossed in what he was doing. And I was mindful of his solitude, even though he was in a park and people were walking around him. But he was in his own zone. And I remind myself all the time, if you don't ask, you're never going to find out. If I don't walk up to him and ask for his permission, I'm going to miss the opportunity of capturing a photograph that I really have become to enjoy.
Yeah.
But I just don't go up and ask, can I take a picture? I engage with him to understand what's he doing. So as a craftsman, as an artist, I try to understand and enjoy his passion. Ask him to share with me what he's doing and teach me what he's doing,
Yeah.
so I can understand what he's doing, and then build up a level of trust. Now, this might only take 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I won't even attempt to ask, can I take a picture? And it'll be at the end of the conversation, it'll be a casual, would you mind if I take a picture?
Yeah.
But by which time I've got his trust, or their trust.
Yeah.
And it becomes more of a personal picture then, rather than a snapped picture. Now,
Absolutely.
street photography can be a snapped moment as well. It might be somebody doing something on the other side of the street. Now, there's no way I can run across and get their permission because of what they're doing. I want to capture that moment, so I do. So it's about weighing up what's right to do,
Yeah.
or what can I do legally? Because as a street photographer, you're in your right to take pictures of people. I do avoid taking pictures of children, to avoid any complications or any
Yeah.
conversation, just to avoid that. What is interesting though, London has so many private property that you don't know you're on private property. I've been challenged a number of times by the owners of the property to say, "Oi, you can't take pictures on my property." But the conversation goes, "But I can take pictures with my phone, can't I?" Yeah, that's fine, they say, but you can't take pictures with your camera. But I say, what's the difference? Well, your camera, you're a professional. I said, I'm not, and I'm an amateur photographer. But because I walk around this, no, I'm just showing my camera, but it's not coming out.
Yeah.
But because I walk around with my camera, it looks like a professional camera. Then I'm deemed a professional. And
Interesting.
the daft thing is, I can probably take as good a picture with my phone as I can with my camera.
It's true.
Yeah. And just one last anecdote on this point.
Okay.
I had a friendly conversation with one security guard outside the building. I wasn't going to take a picture because I could see the boundary, and I walked over the boundary, and I knew he was going to approach me. But I just wanted to see what the image was going to look like. So I was trying to frame an image in my mind. And he comes over and says, "I know what you're going to say, but I can't take the picture." He says, "Absolutely." So what I did, I stepped back 2 paces. I looked at him and I says, "I can now take the picture, can't I?" "Yes," he says. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Same image,
Yeah.
but you're standing in a different place.
It's a lesson for all of us to listen to and to learn, because I think taking photographs of people nowadays without their permission is becoming quite problematic, and I think we could be very careful of that. But respecting other people's privacy, and people want to be more private. Once upon a time, I'll tell you one little tiny thing before I ask you this last question. I remember in China years and years and years ago when I first went back in the 1980s. I was told that if you take a photo of a Chinese person, you're stealing their soul. Okay, so I didn't want to do that, so I wouldn't take pictures. And then years later, when I went back to Shanghai and to Beijing and to all the other places, they had their mobile phones and they couldn't stop taking selfies. I thought, what happened to your soul? Suddenly, it was a whole different world from the 80s to the 90s and then to the noughties. And I thought, oh, so they don't care about their soul anymore. That's fine. So now I can take a picture of you, can't I? Crazy. So a little birdie has told me that you have another book about to be launched. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
It is called Return to the End of the Line, a London by National Rail. So it's the same as book one, but different. I actually started the journey for book two whilst I was writing book one. So this time, instead of traveling on the underground, I've traveled across London on the rail network. So there are 11 train companies that run rail services across London. So I've traveled either to an end of the line on a rail network or as far as I can on my Freedom Pass within the London boundary.
Yeah.
So Amersham to West Ruislip. There are 56 stations. So the book has been printed in proof. I've got a proof copy. If I could show it to you, I would show it to you, but the screen won't let me.
I'm sorry about that.
Crowdfunding will be open on the 10th of October, so you can pre-order on the 10th of October. It will be available from the 21st of November.
Okay.
Cost is £27 and £5 postage and packing. All that will be made available to everyone across my social media and my blog site over the coming days and weeks.
Yeah. And on that particular note of social media, I have to say that, Richard, you are one of the people that I've noticed how consistent you've been on social media. And I think it's something that I need to learn about consistency. I think it's every day, every second day, you're posting something, and every day is something to be looking at. And I think that is really what makes you very special about the way your book is, your presentation, the way you carry everything in a wonderful way. I applaud your book. I'm looking forward to your next book. I'm definitely going to buy your second book. I shall become a collector of your books as time goes by. And I hope, everybody, that you've really enjoyed this conversation that we've had together with Richard about his first book. If you haven't read the book, I would really advise you to take this opportunity to get in touch with Richard. I know he's www.theendoftheline.blog is your website. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah, so if you go onto the website, I'm sure you'll be able to access his book. Is your book on Amazon? End of the Line, is it on Amazon?
No, just through me.
Oh, it's just through Richard. So I really would advise you, because it's not just a book, it's a journey. And I think that's what's very special about your book. And to me, it's in a way, actually, very quickly, it's a memoir for me. It's because part of your story is very much my life in London as well. I only wish now I'd paid more attention, but now I know a little bit more. So I want to thank you, Richard, for coming on this author's chat. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope the listeners will have enjoyed it, and it will be available on YouTube by Friday of this week if you'd like to look at it or tell other people about it. And do please buy Richard's first book, The End of the Line. And those who have, please do buy Richard's second book, The Return to the End of the Line. Is that it?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard, for a wonderful conversation and an opportunity to speak with you.
And thank you, Beth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye for now, Richard. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.